Hi, welcome to Stage 39 about the Language 1 review. We are going to talk about fear clauses. So we already know that nay can introduce a negative purpose clause or a negative indirect command. So now we're going to talk about how nay introduces positive fear clauses. So we're going to start with some review though. So first, purpose clauses. So Mercator pecuniam in silva celat, ne fores eam inveniant. The merchant hides the money in the forest in order that the thieves may not find it, lest the thieves find it. Because our main verb is talking about present or future time, here it's a present indicative, to express same time in the clause, we need inveniant, a present subjunctive. Let's get another example. Mercator pecuniam in silva celaurat, ne fores eam invenierent. The merchant had hidden the money in the forest in order that the thieves might not find it, or lest the thieves find it. Celaurat is talking about past time. That's a pluperfect indicative. And so now we need an imperfect subjunctive in our purpose clause. Indirect commands. So let's start with this example, which has its main verb in the present. The thieves persuade you not to frighten the old men. So it's present indicative is our main verb. So in order to express same time as that main verb or time future to that main verb, we're going to use a present subjunctive. In this example, we take that main verb and I put it in the imperfect. So the main verb is now about past time. And so we're going to need not a present subjunctive, but an imperfect subjunctive. So the thieves were persuading you not to terrify the old men. Okay? Now here are our fear clauses. First, let's start with a couple that have their main verb in the present. Pueri timent, ne hostes oppidum deleant. The boys are afraid that the enemies are destroying the town. Present tense main verb, and the action in this fear clause is taking place at the same time as this main verb, or maybe future to that main verb. Either way, we're going to use a present subjunctive here. Just like we used a present subjunctive in the purpose clauses and the indirect commands that had present tense main verbs. Okay, now, pueri timet ne hostes oppidum deleverent. The boys are afraid that the enemies have destroyed the town. Deleverent. Here, the action in our clause is happening before that verb, and that's why we need a perfect subjunctive there. So, same time as or future to the main verb, we're going to use a present subjunctive. Before the main verb, we're going to use this perfect subjunctive. But what if our main verb is in a past tense? Here I've chosen the imperfect indicative. So, pueri timebant ne hostes oppidum delerent. So there's our fear clause. The boys were afraid that the enemies were destroying the town. So if the action in your fear clause is happening same time as or future to your main verb and your main verb's in a past tense, then you're going to use an imperfect subjunctive, just like purpose clauses and indirect commands that are introduced by a verb in a past tense use the imperfect subjunctive. Let's look at this one. Pueri timebant ne hostes oppidum dele visent. The boys were afraid that the enemies had destroyed the town. So now we're using a pluperfect subjunctive. Okay? Pluperfect subjunctive means time before the main verb when the main verb is in a past tense. So here's that chart. I think we've seen this before. If your main verb is in a present or future tense, then your subordinate clause, whether that's a purpose clause or an indirect command or a fear clause or an indirect question, your subordinate clause will have a present subjunctive if the action in that clause is happening same time as or subsequent to, future to that main verb, and a perfect subjunctive if it happens prior to that main verb. If your main verb is in a past tense, if the action in your subordinate clause, in your fear clause, or in your indirect question happens at the same time as the main verb or future to the main verb, then it's an imperfect subjunctive. If it happened before, it's a pluperfect subjunctive. So this part of the chart is the only part of the chart that we use with purpose clauses and with indirect commands, because the action in a purpose clause or an indirect command is always same time as or future to, subsequent to the main verb. But in indirect questions and in fear clauses, we're also going to use, and in cum clauses too, we can also use this part of the chart, because sometimes in fear clauses or in indirect questions, the action in that subordinate clause has happened already before the main verb. What if you have a negative fear clause? Well, you actually can do a negative fear clause with ut, but more often you still use ne and you put a known inside the clause. So, pueri timent ne mater canem non inveniat. The boys are afraid that their mother won't find or isn't finding the dog. Present tense main verb. Action in the subordinate clause is happening same time as or subsequent to the main verb. We're going to use a present subjunctive. Pueri timet ne mater canem non invenerit. Now the action in this clause is happening before that main verb. So we have a perfect subjunctive. The boys are afraid that their mother hasn't found the dog or didn't find the dog. If we put our main verb in a past tense, then we end up with an imperfect or a pluperfect subjunctive. First, the imperfect subjunctive. The boys were afraid, pueri timebant, ne mater canem non invenierent, that their mother wouldn't find the dog or that their mother wasn't finding the dog. This action, because it's an imperfect subjunctive, has to be happening same time as or future to that verb that introduces the fear clause. Now this one, pueri timebant ne mater canem non invenisset. The boys were afraid that their mother hadn't found the dog. This action, invenisset, is in the pluperfect subjunctive, so it must be happening before that main verb. And that's it for fear clauses. Remember, positive fear clauses are introduced by ne. Negative fear clauses have ne and then a known. Sometimes ut, but usually not. Usually it's ne known. And that's it.